Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the delay this morning. Having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we got them figured out. We had a few technical difficulties trying to get this thing up and running because don't know if you know, but I've been away for a couple of weeks. And I'm standing up today because I don't know if I can get off the couch. If I sit down after doing that workout yesterday, we are going to start this thing off with. Oh, yeah. Let me just make sure. Get you hyped up this morning. How do you make it bigger? There we go. Even bigger. There we go. Oh, yeah. Now we're talking. Good morning. Woo! That's how you start a podcast. Dang. Deca Strong coming up. Fit Fest coming up. Have you signed up? Do you have a ticket? Do you have a partner? Do you need a partner? If you need a partner, if you have a partner, let me know. Let me know what you signed up for. Deca Strong. Something to really get your training dialed in for. Now, that's a fitness side of thing. If that's something that you want to do, great. But also, we have Deca Atlas. A little different video here. It's on Instagram. How do I make it so I'm small? Oh, maybe I just do that. Nope. That. Nope. All right, let's just zoom in. Deca Atlas. Deca Atlas. Man, which one are you going to do? Do you want to get really strong? Do you want to get really fit? Or as we do at OxFit, we get strong, fit, and ripped at the same time, right? There's your choices. Not training for nothing. You know what I mean? We're not training for nothing here at OxFit. We got goals, we got things coming up. So let me know which one you want to do. And yeah, how have you guys been? What you been up to? Did you have a good spring break? I had a great spring break. I didn't even take my workout shoes to make sure that I took some time off after the first quarter because we trained hard going up to Beach Brawl and my body was definitely feeling it. So took a little time off and then back in the gym yesterday with thrusters and pull-ups, which is, yeah, just rip off the Band-Aid. Just like ripping off a Band-Aid to start off the week. So what's been going on in the gym? Are you training for Deca Atlas? Are you training for Deca Strong? Do you have a partner? Do you need a partner? Let me know. So today we are going to spend a little time talking about protein powders and if your protein powder is actually toxic. So I Googled when I saw this. It's called the Clean Label Project. And they've done coffees, they've done dog food, they've done snack and nutrition bars, and they've done protein powders. And the one that interested me the most were the protein powders. So the Clean Label Project is a nonprofit, and have they want to check for purity of these proteins. So they tested 160 protein powders from 70 of the top selling brands. They said that's about 83% of the market. This is the scary part, is 47% of the protein powders, 47% exceeded California's Prop 65 limit for toxic heavy metals in one serving. So if you just go and pick a random protein, you got 50% chance of it having toxic heavy metals. So those 45, the dirtiest five, just to let you know, the dirtiest five protein powders contain exponentially more heavy metals per serving. And it was 45.9 times more cadmium, 38.4 times more lead, 31.5 times more arsenic, and 2 times more mercury than the best. They had a clean 16 that they recommend. Now that's crazy, right? That's crazy. And I don't know if you know this, but the Harvard and the FDA, they recommend that you eat about 50 grams to 60 grams of protein per day. Caitlin, stop drinking protein. And maybe that's an option. Maybe that's where we go, right? Maybe that is the best option. But that's not possible for everybody, right? When you've got big goals and you want to, take over the world, and food just keeps getting more expensive every 2 days, right? So, what do we want to talk about in terms of protein then? How can we um, think about this? So, what we need to look at is um, what are the worst proteins? Like, before I tell you which ones are the best and which ones are on that clean 16, um, is it specific brands? Well, in general, what I want to tell you, the worst ones are actually usually the most popular because they're built for taste, marketing, and price, and not necessarily quality, right? Like most bad foods. So think of it like that. The most popular foods that are in the most people's hands that you get to see the most commercials for and the most advertising for, um, a lot of it's garbage, right? Just in general. So one thing you want to look out for is mass gainers. That's the biggest scam in the supplement industry because why they're popular is because they have this bulk fast idea. A lot of marketing, cheap calories, and they're easy to drink. So they're loaded with maltodextrin and sugars. Basically, powdered carbs is what you're drinking. There's often more carbs in them than protein. So there's a higher risk of heavy metals and contaminants in these, and they can spike your insulin and you can gain fat instead of muscle. So the one thing you want to think about, this is not chemically, but most mass gainers, protein and junk carbs that you could get from cheaper stuff, cheaper food. You want to be careful of also, so the second thing is the cheap whey blends, right? They're popular because they're lower price, they're bigger tubs, and they've got flashy labels, right? Why they're bad is they usually use a low grade whey concentrate. They've got more lactose and less protein. And them also are often padded with fillers. And so you're getting less protein per scoop. And in some of them, it can be as low as 35% of actual protein. So you're just drinking fillers, basically. You think you're getting 25 grams of protein, and you're probably not. So just be careful with that. If anything's like 2 or 3 scoops for 20 grams of protein, then most of them scoops are just full of fillers. The next thing is some of these proteins are deceptive. They're amino spiked proteins. So they look like high protein on the label, but actually they just add cheap amino acids like glycine and taurine to fake their protein numbers. What that does is it tricks the nitrogen testing and it gives them an inflated protein count. That's the supplement version of watering down your gas, right? So you think you're getting something, but really it's just been watered down with other things. So be careful of mass gainers, cheap whey blends, and then amino spiked proteins, and then the dessert flavored proteins, right? Like cookies, cereal, the ones that sound too good to be true. Usually they're full of artificial sweeteners, gums, and fake flavoring, right? It says artificial flavor on the label. Look out for that. There's less room there for actual protein and they're lower quality. So you're probably going to bloat more with them. I know everybody here has had the protein farts. So you're going to be gassy and you're going to have good issues. If it tastes like an amazing, incredible, best you've ever had milkshake, it's actually probably closer to being a milkshake than it is a protein shake. And you know, if something's too good to be true, it probably is, right? And now this is one reason Caitlin probably stopped drinking protein, but she can tell you, but the plant-based proteins, healthy, vegan, clean branding, often are incomplete amino acid profiles unless they're blended with other things, right? So you're probably not getting everything that you need from a plant-based protein. And because it's plant-based, there's a much higher risk of heavy metals from the soil contamination. And then it's processed, right? So you're stripping away all the good stuff. You might just be getting basically like a pea metal shake, right? More additives to fix the taste and the texture. So what is in that plant-based protein is something that, we're not sure, right? So that's something to think about if you do the plant-based is it could be higher in the heavy metals and it could be incomplete amino acid profile and they have to add a lot more stuff to make it taste good. And let me tell you, they still don't they still don't achieve that in the plant-based ones. Loaded proteins, so the ones with all the added extras. So they're marketed as like an all-in-one. They've got your proteins, your greens, your hormones, your recovery stuff. A massive lift of ingredients, 15 to 20, is a giant red flag. That's usually hidden sugars, fillers, and just junk that we talked about in the mass gainers. You pay for things that you don't need, basically, and things that don't work. Influencer and unknown brands, right? So the hype, aesthetic, lifestyle marketing that you see from influencers. Usually these ones, they pay people to cover up the fact that they don't do any like third party testing, right? If I just get in as many people's hands as possible and people talk about it, they're not going to ask as many questions. That person takes it, they're jacked. And usually that person doesn't take it, they're just associated with it. So you've got, you know, supplements that aren't tightly regulated, they're pre sale and they're just selling you a lifestyle and they're not selling you the actual product. So the real problem that most people miss when they're looking at protein is not just the brands, it's the protein powder is cheaper, tastier, more complex, and more hyped. Usually the lower quality that it is. A simple rule that I want you to think about. 25 per scoop. Let's say 20 to 25, like I'm not saying if one scoop is 20 is bad, but 20 to 25 per scoop is going to be good. You want it to be low carb. I'd say less than 5 grams is awesome, but let's say 5 to 8 grams. You want it to be low fat and you want a short ingredient list. 3 ingredients to 8 ingredients, right? If it breaks those rules, so less than 20 to 25 per scoop, high in carbs, over 8 grams, high in fat, and a massive list of ingredients, it's probably trash. The thing that I want you to think about in this is most people don't have a protein problem, they have a discipline and food quality problem. Protein should be a convenience tool and not your main source of nutrition. Like Caitlin said, she doesn't do protein shakes anymore. And there's a reason for that, right? So you need to be thinking about what is the cleanest protein I can get and how many ingredients does that have it in. You don't want to be eating really good, eating really clean, looking after your nutrition, and then drinking some trash protein shake. Um, and then wondering why you're not getting results when it could just be absolute rubbish, full of filler, full of sugar, full of junk, and you're taking that into your system, right? So the best overall proteins in terms of being completely clean, um, there is one with one ingredient, and it's called Centaurus grass-fed whey protein. And so, literally one ingredient, which you don't see very often. My protein that I take is by Transparent Labs, and it's grass-fed, hormone-free whey isolate protein. And the thing that I've noticed that I get from that is that I don't have any gas with that. And every other whey protein that I take, yeah, I have the protein thoughts. And so I know that it's a lot cleaner than the rest and based on the ingredient list and stuff like that. So that's just in general advice, right? So if you want to know the brands, I can send you a list of the brands that one I have one that is, like if you care about testing and it being certified as the best protein, I know the best one for that. My daily one, best overall daily protein that I use, Transparent Labs. I have no association with them. That's just the one that I found is the best. Zero junk in it. One ingredient is that Centaurus protein. And then if you want clean and great taste, if you're on a budget, then there's one called NutriCost. But honestly, the NutriCost is about the same as the others. If anything, it's a little bit more expensive than um, Transparent Labs. So, but just some things to think about. Now, the scary side of things, the place that we started with, the thing that you've been waiting for here is let me bring up this list of the Clean Label Project. That is not the one. It is this. Okay. It's a little bit bigger. Okay, so the Clean 16 that they've come up with, let's look at it. So there's 16 protein powders that stood out as non-detectable for lead, cadmium, mercury, and arsenic, right? And so we've got a bunch here, and I'll put a link to this sheet in the show notes so that you can see it, or in the description. And Optimum Nutrition is on there, and that's really good that that one's on there because I know a lot of people drink that one. Vital Proteins is a collagen peptide one that a lot of people drink. And then here's an organic one that's grass-fed vanilla whey. I don't think there are any plant-based ones that they found on there that had undetectable levels. They're all kind of whey proteins. And for me, the gold standard whey is really good, but I would either do, if I'm looking at this list, the Isopure or the Dynamax, because they're isolate proteins. And for me, the isolate proteins just digest a lot better. Now, one thing that I saw Lauren is listening, one thing that Lauren's not going to like is the chocolate protein usually tests higher in the chemicals because chocolate has, you know, artificial sweeteners and stuff like that. But also, chocolate might have some arsenic in it, might have some other stuff in it. So, the crazy thing is, on the side of the chemicals, what I want to talk about with the chemicals is heavy metals like arsenic, cadmium, mercury are in protein powders because of the natural environment and because of the industrial concentration. They're not added by manufacturers, right? So, because protein powders are highly concentrated, derivatives of agricultural crops and animal products and any trace metals in the raw materials become magnified in the final powdered supplement, right? So, heavy metals are naturally occurring elements found in the Earth's crust. So, decades of industrial pollution, mining, pesticide use, fossil emissions have significantly increased their presence in general in the global soil and waterways, right? There's a sponge effect that plants act as environmental filters. So as they grow, they naturally absorb the water and minerals from the earth and they inadvertently suck up these heavy metals. They're in the animal feed. So whey and casein powders, heavy metals can enter through the animal's food supply, right? So if dairy cows are exposed to drinking water or feed grown in metal-rich soil, then that's how it comes in. The main problem with the whey proteins is the concentration process. So like in their raw whole food forms, like a field of peas, there's trace amounts of heavy metals, and they're usually low and digested safely by the body. But to make protein powder, manufacturers process massive amounts of raw plants or milk to isolate the pure protein. So they strip away the water, they strip away the fiber and the bulk to create a concentrated powder, and also uses background heavy metals to become highly concentrated in a single serving. So because they're stripping all that stuff away, your single serving is now highly processed and might have higher levels of heavy metals than it would when it was in its raw form. So the cheaper proteins, they're not going to worry about that, right? The ones that don't really care, they're just trying to put a product together to make money. So you've got to think about that. So plant-based proteins such as pea, hemp, and rice consistently test higher for heavy metals than whey. They absorb The plants absorb metals directly from the earth, whereas animal biology naturally filters out a portion of that toxin when they make it into the milk. The chocolate factor is the thing that I was talking about earlier, where chocolate protein powders frequently test higher levels of lead, cadmium, I keep saying that wrong, than vanilla. Cocoa plants are uniquely highly effective at extracting heavy metals from the soil. So if they're using real cocoa, then it's probably going to raise the level. Now, is that something you want to worry about? In the Clean 16, most of them that they tested that were low were vanilla, right? So keep that in mind. Does it matter if you have chocolate or vanilla? It's something that you've got to figure out. So, in many countries, including the US, the dietary supplements are not strictly regulated by the government before they hit the market. So, the FDA monitors supplements, but generally doesn't enforce like proactive or mandatory heavy metal testing before products are sold to consumers. So that's why it's important that you might want to check out this Clean 16 and try and pick one that's in there. But you can also look yourself, right? There's NSF, Certified for Sport, and the Clean Label Project are both really good resources on this. Another thing that you could do is you could rotate your proteins, right? So if you avoid using the same plant protein every day, you might prevent an accumulation of the same metals. So say you have a few different kinds of protein, like you have a pea protein, you have a hemp protein, you have a rice protein. I don't know. I just use whey isolate. Maybe you rotate them around so that you're not getting the same contamination every day. That might be something you want to do. But you just need to think about which ones you're taking in and where the risks are that you want to take on this. Okay. So yeah, I know every day it feels like there's more bad news on the things that you're consuming, right? But I think this is all good stuff. I don't think you should see this as a negative. I think there are ways to get good whey proteins. Um, it's just like everything. You want to read the label, you want to double check, you want to make sure that you're if you're spending all that time training, you're spending all that time working on your nutrition, you spend all that time being really conscious about what you eat, don't just throw a random protein supplement into your diet and expect to get good results, right? You might be taking in junk. And some of these ones that are the most popular and influencer pushed and, like not focusing on words like organic, quality, like where are they getting their ingredients, then I'm not sure if there's even protein in them, right? So that's the next thing that I'm going to look into. Some of these are getting tested and they've got way lower levels of protein than what is on the label. There's been a creatine gummy scandal. If you get creatine gummies, where they've been testing these creatine gummies and finding trace amounts of creatine. So you're just eating candy, basically. And like I said, anything that seems too good to be true, Usually is. If these candy gummies taste amazing, probably too good to be true. If that protein shake is the best shake you've ever had, it's probably a milkshake and not a protein shake. And then you got to figure out what they're putting in it to make it taste like that. So, the good news, there are clean proteins out there. I will put the link to that Clean Label Project and the Clean 16 in there. I would say if you are drinking a protein right now that is not on the list of the Clean 16, when you go and buy another one, if you usually do a plant-based protein, try a whey isolate. Just try it. Take like half a scoop and see what it does to you because you might be surprised that the isolate protein might not have a negative effect on you. So it's worth a try to go with an isolate just to see if it might be the regular whey concentrate you can't take. So try the isolate. If you're taking a whey protein, I also recommend trying an isolate and seeing how it affects your stomach. So there is some good news there. The bad news, if you love chocolate proteins, if you're really conscious about cutting down the heavy metals in your system, then I would say try vanilla next time. See if you can get used to it. But don't just eat 50 grams of protein a day. If you need to take a protein shake, look at these Clean 16. Most men should be 150 grams plus. Most women should be 130 to 140 grams plus of protein per day if you want results, if you want muscle, if you want bone density, if you want to keep being able to do cool stuff. And the cool stuff you should be doing is sign up for our DECA Strong and DECA Atlas before it sells out. I'm going to leave you with sign up. Today's the day.